Francis Bacon, he's another beautiful one. English philosopher, what we would call today Attorney General, lecturer at Cambridge University where he studied. Most widely known as a philosopher, he used his role as an Attorney General for the creation of laws to bring a better ordered society. A particularly close friend of the king of the time and associate. He had a tortured life in many respects because he was in the upper echelon of society, but he was poor. And they judged people through their finances, and he was always trying to duck going to what's called a debtor's court. And if you couldn't pay your debts, well, you're put in jail until you could pay them, and if you're in jail, you can't pay them. So you spent your life in jail. And that was of particular concern to him. And he spent his life trying to avoid debtor's jail, trying to accumulate some funds and trying to achieve all that he wanted to. He was a loving, gorgeous man. He has a mind that is unbelievable. Not quite, I would say the mind of Leonardo, but he calls himself a perturbationist. He likes to perturb the thoughts of the mind, and he believes that everything is able to be talked about, that nothing's out of bounds. And he tells us over and over that whilst he was married, he was homosexual, and he was married for appearances, and that was all. And he was very proud of his homosexuality, but he lived in fear because it wasn't allowed to be openly disclosed because it was a crime at the time. That made his life difficult both from his sexual proclivity perspective and from his financial perspective, yet within that he achieved so much, all through the use of his loving mind and trying to help society. What he does for us more than anything is open up the mind and allows people to see how controlled and constructed we are by culture, by society, but mostly by our upbringing. And he would be the primary person on the council that allows people the opportunity to break free of early constraints and constructs, and allows them to openly move to being who they are by anything's okay to talk about. Oh,
very
always
provocative.
Funny.
Very provocative.
But he shocks everyone he talks to. No, there's no shock to us.
Generally about sex in some
generally
form or
sex,
another.
yeah. Generally sex. He's hilarious. But then he drops off the hilarity with the most serious of point. Everything's, like all of them, they don't waste a word. Everything's for a purpose. They don't speak to hear their voice. They're always making a point.
We're now commencing a trance mediumship session with Ian. We will now converse with Francis Bacon.
Well, on one hand, religions are particularly important to the world. And the formation of groups, formation of beliefs, they're very important. But this notion of sin, I find perturbing. This notion that there's some divine rule, ostensibly from a God, that says you're a sinner, you shall be punished. I find that reprehensible. How many people on earth need to be punished by someone else when they're doing such a fine job of punishing themselves through their failures? I was a person of laws, of rules, hopefully for the betterment of society as I saw it was going to go. But rules for the sake of rules, to restrict liberty, to restrict movement, to restrict freedoms, a freedom of thought, to have people believe that I can't do this and that and the other because it is a sin against a God. That is quite scary. So what it's doing is drawing together the power of the fear within religion and the fear of the state. And make no mistake, over time, the states are not dumb. They've learned to follow the fear which has traditionally been used within religion, put it, embed it into the state rule, so that most people will act in accord with the rules of the state through fear. So little is done in society to cause people to act for the betterment of each other, for the betterment of each other. I shall act this way because if I don't, I shall be in trouble. Isn't that how people are parented? So it was taught from childhood and moved up. And therefore people live in a shakiness, with an imbalance within themselves, where their mind is not able to flow freely, where they're not able to think constructively, because everything is destructive. To get somewhere, I shall destroy someone else, or at least hold the threat of destroying someone else. And those who try to work with collaboration, with cooperation, decried as weak. Where power and greatness is described through wealth, no matter how it was achieved. So the priorities of the world are askew. That is a great difficulty. Effectively, what you're taught is what to think and how to think, and what you're not allowed to think about. So in terms of what Sigmund was referring and talking to you about, it's not just the man of mind that chooses to do this, but because the man of mind says, I shall put all hurtful things away, because I don't want to be hurt again, that plays into the cultural aspects of society of those who would rule you to say, well, if you do this, that, or the other, it will be just the same. You shall be punished, you shall be hurt. It will be bad. It's sinful. And therefore, I don't want that to happen to me. I can't think freely or properly about this situation. I just know that I can't be in trouble. I must do what someone else tells me to do. So the freedom of thought is a victim. It was a victim in society in my time, but not as much as it's a victim today. The rules are set by mostly those who are unseen to you, who are wanting to do things that will advantage them. And the populace of the earth are their puppets. Therefore I find that my job is to try and implore people to use their mind fully, in a constructive way, in a way of collaboration, a way of working together. That if I can go and find freedom, who else can I induce to follow me? Who can I allow to see the benefits as well as the difficulties of what I am doing? Who can be inspired by my spirit, by my desire to change myself and therefore my life? Sad is the man who achieves greatly in his work, but is unhappy and constrained, and who feels he cannot fully be himself. Sad is the woman who does not tell her man where it is a man. That is the case. Sad is the world where there's such a lack of equality, that men and women are different and seen at different levels still in your society. Sad is the world when you have to prove to each other by audacious acts that it's acceptable to have different sexual proclivities. Why can't people feel it's acceptable just to get on with that and do that quietly? Because that is what they want to do. And in living their life with this freedom, they will show others. One of the problems when people in society are mandated to act in certain ways, they will then try to mandate others to follow them through the extremity of their actions. It was always meant that the power of people is to be who they are and to allow others to view that. And for all forms of temples to congregate with each other in groups of likeness, where eventually some will say, I want to move up or on to that temple to learn more. This is the way of the world of spirit. This is how it was meant to be on earth. But how can people grow? How can they change? How can they aspire when they're so used to being mandated? We're not allowed to be any more than what someone tells us we're allowed to be. Otherwise we shall be punished. And I've learned to live in fear. I would like people to have the only fear on earth that they have is the fear of not being free to be themselves. Then we would have something to behold. That's what would happen for a long time. The revolution needs to be. You can impact upon me in so many ways, but you cannot mandate how I think. You cannot mandate how I feel. and I shall allow that to guide my actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. What would you advise that the first practical step is for a person listening to you today who lives in an entirety of fear of making a decision of their own choice?
Whether their parent is alive or dead, stop living in fear of the disapproval of their parent. Thank you.
Wasn't that amazing? Thank you so much for watching. And if you want to find out more about each of the council members and hear a message by Trance with Ian Rogers, be sure to like, comment or subscribe, and check out all the other videos on each of the council members on this channel. Thanks so much.